Hello, and welcome to the Monster Painter. This week, I dig into a $3 bag of thrift store junk. Now, this particular bag of thrift store junk contains a whole bunch of cheap plastic animals, many of which are in scale or close to scale for tabletop gaming. 28mm, 25mm, 32mm maybe. So let's take a good look and see if we can make anything useful out of this pile of plastic junk. So a Reaper Mini and a Hero Quest Mini will be joining us for scale. And first up is the real junk. Some kind of Ninja Turtle toy and two things I can't even describe. Next up we have some cutesy animals. The scale is good, but they are way too cartoony to use. Then we have a couple more way too cartoony animals. Lions are great. These are not. Now for some proper beasts. A kangaroo, a horse, and a calf. All too big, but I have a plan for that calf. This poor German soldier is way too out of scale to be useful, but I am sure he has seen more skirmishes than the other two put together. I have brought in a 28mm horse to help with the scale, and these two plastic horses definitely have potential, but being cheap plastic toys, they also come with some problems. This pig is perfect. The goat and the sheep are a little large, but they feel right and we'll use them. Once again though, there are problems. These three cows are in scale and will be quite useful. After all, a cow is sometimes worth much more than gold. Some exotic animals, a walrus and a kangaroo. Not quite the right scale, but close enough, and we'll work with them. Some big animals, not quite big enough for 28mm scale, but when you drop down to old-fashioned 25mm scale, the elephant, the bison, and the rhino are just fine. My favorite so far has to be this gorilla. He's excellent. I will make the cartoon monkey into a statue, I think, and the chimp is just too big to use. These two big cats really hit their marks, and they're going to be quite useful. The greyhound is too big to use, but this weird guy is perfect and a lot of fun, and he doesn't even need a paint job. Awesome. Lastly, this ridiculous red dinosaur has no place on the tabletop, except it is also a pencil sharpener, and I happen to need a pencil sharpener, so I'm going to keep it. Okay, it's time to get to work, and if these cheap plastic toys are going to become wargaming miniatures, we're going to have to do some work. The first and perhaps most important step is to clean up all the flash on these things. As we know, the cheaper the model, the more flash and mold lines we get. And these have to be the cheapest possible models in the world. So I'm going to use my utility knife to trim off all that flash as best as I can. Always being mindful when using a utility knife, it is sharp and cuts flesh as easily as flash. This is going to be a bit of work, but it is work that is well worth it, as it improves the model quite a bit and helps them look like a proper tabletop miniature. Next up, I'm going to mix up some JB Weld plastic bonder. It's a two-part epoxy glue, and it sticks plastic down hard. I will use this to attach our more tipsy animals to some bases. Most of the contact points are quite small, and the plastic is very cheap, and I don't want to mess around, which is why I'm using this stuff instead of regular super glue, which with cheap plastic can get a little dodgy. The bases are from the Bones 5 Kickstarter, and while they cost more than the beasts, for sure, they are still pretty cheap. Here are all the beasts, primed up in acrylic gesso and ready to paint. And here they are in their base coats. Oops, looks like JB Weld failed this horse. Oh well. Okay, my golden calves and monkey statue are coming along quite nicely. Gonna give them a bunch of layers of gray dry brushing. The cows are getting started, a nice brown cow. And of course, elephants and rhinos, gotta go gray. Here come the goat, bison, and horse. Again, nice and brown. followed by the exotic kangaroo and walrus. There's a theme starting. Then on to the white gorilla and his friend the sheep. And finally, a look at the big cats, and it's on to the finished products. The creatures from exotic lands turned out really nicely. The scale on all of them isn't quite perfect, but they're still very convincing and will definitely add texture and inhabitants to all those faraway settings that you might want to cook up. The cows turned out nicely, and they'll be very versatile, as well as the rest of the barnyard animals. I'm pretty pleased, and these will have many uses because there are always farms. Next up are my statues. I love the cheeky little monkey. I think he'll be quite a nice little bit of texture. And I adore my golden calf, the kind of monument guaranteed to make the cleric really, really angry. And lastly, we have the weird alien who only needed a base, and the white gorilla who is destined for my Frostgrave bestiary. And here are those barnyard animals in their natural habitat. Some ancient farm, or maybe a farm from the distant future, but it's definitely a farm run by a space alien. Then there's the natural habitat of our exotic animals, some distant faraway forest where they can roam free and be happy. And finally, we have the parts that are destined for my favorite game, Frostgrave, where they will be seeing plenty of use in the frozen city of Old Felstad. But what of those big cats that I painted bright blue? Well, I didn't finish them, but they will be featured in an upcoming video on the Monster Painter. As for next week on the Monster Painter, I'm going to paint up some fancy terrain. Moo! Bah! Bah! Subscribe and ring the bell. Ring the bell!